Hello, I'm Kelvin and I work for Admir. And first of all, I'd like to say thanks to the many emails I got from with response to my last movie that I made about AngularJS with Signal R and SQL Server and a little MongoDB. Thank you all for that. Today, I'd like to continue by trying to make our lives easier when it comes to getting data from SQL Server back into a web page. So that is the requirement of this little movie and the code behind it to do that. So here we go. As I say, the requirements will be to get data back from SQL Server and put that data into a web page. And hopefully we won't be writing any code to do it. I've written the code to do it, but you won't have to. All you will need to do is supply a little bit of HTML and declare and add me a directive. As you can see, we've got a directive called WebAPI 2, and I've set up properties called tables, and within that properties we've got some more properties, and I've just spelled out that the table that I want to get data from is the customers table there. I've also got a property of action which is set to query, which basically just says bring back the data please. I've put an action attribute there because I think maybe in the future we'll just put in the other actions of put, post and delete that we can use with the REST protocol. So at the moment we'll just be using query. So that's the only line that I want us to be able to put in to a web page to actually get the data. What that will do, it will interrogate SQL servers, customers table, bring back the data, and then emit an event which we can all subscribe to then. I want to move a little bit further onwards with it and give it a little bit more functionality, so I decided to use OData, and what we can do then is use the order by clause, and we can do filtering and bring in n amount of records and skip by n amount of records, and really that's about it. I think if we could just put that line of code into a web page and get back some data from our tables, sorted, filtered, etc. I think that's just pretty cool. And I'll go about that in a second. But first off, I'd like to say that it's written on the Angular 1.4 libraries. There's no difference really with this project between 1.3 and 1.4. It's just I thought it's new, I'll use it and see if we get any problems, which I didn't. And the resulting source will be put up on GitHub for you to get, like my last project with Signal R. Okay, so next up then is a little bit of code. Okay, so I've initially talked about the front end being Angular, just talked a little bit about it. We'll go back to it after I've spoken a little bit of Web API and how we get the server to respond to us with the data. So we've got our project. It was originally set up as a Web API project, and I've created three extra controllers. Let's take a look at customers. See, it's very, very simple. I haven't touched it apart from the original scaffolding, apart from just to enable OData querying by installing OData 1.3 and using that query attribute. It lets us sort and filter quite easily. So that's all that's in there, and it's the same applied to bands controller that I've got and the suppliers controller. So very, very straightforward. I always divorce the model from a project, so it's just a simple class library, and here is the model. This is the model showing customers, suppliers, and bands. Okay, that's all we require from that to be able to fire off our Web API controllers. So they look at that and build up the C# syntax for us, and we compile that, and we have Web API. Okay, just want to check that our Web API is actually doing work correctly. So we've got Google Chrome here. I will check for suppliers, and they come back quite well, so I'm happy with that. So we know that Web API is definitely working. Let's check out our customers. Yeah, so I'm happy. Okay, we can move on. In index HTML, we reference the module, and I've called it app add me a main. So if you look in there, we can see that there's not too much going on. It just declares that it's the module app add me a main, and references app web API, another module. So we look at app web API module. Again, that's very straightforward. Just references the AngularJS resource. So if you look at the controller we've set up, we just say that it's in the module app add me a main. We pass in scope, and we only really respond to an event that's emitted by our directive, our web API directive. So let's move into that directive. Here we are, the directive. We pass in ID and tables from index.html. In this case, customers, the ID. We set up a variable called tables that is JSONified, I guess, just to make it a little bit easier for Angular to use. And it's for each loop. We go for if we could have set up multiple tables here, as I've done here actually. So for each table that comes through, we're going to set up some parameters for OData to do some filtering, ordering, etc. And we pass that then through here. We've got the factory method, manage all. We're going to reference the factory F web API 2. I'll just show that in a second. Call up manage all, pass in the table name that's come through in the loop. And if we're successful, we're going to then do the emit. We're going to fire off an event that passes in the table name that we've just referenced and the data that's come back from SQL Server. So we take a look at the factory method. Again, this is so simple. All we're really doing here is setting up manage all as a service, calling that, passing in the table name, and then this is the major line, I guess, where we just substitute the table name in to the API call. So it'll be API customers, API suppliers, API anybody. So if it fails, we just log it. So hopefully it's a success, and we come back to our main controller, which says, okay, I'm going to respond to the results of the event, and I'm going to take the eo.data, event object that just stands for, and I'm going to set it up on scope, and I'm going to give you something called table name and list concatenated together. And there are my two table names, customer list, suppliers list. We've just got back in the event, and that's really all there is to it. We could just extend this by adding new tables and just add in basically this extra bit of code here for another table, and setting up another directive. That should really be it. And here we are back at our opening page, where I think I've made life easy for myself there. If I need to add a new table, all I need to do is go into SQL Server, create that table, and then need to go into the model, add that table to the model, need to add web API, and that should bring me back the data. Then to get it back into the web page, all I need to do then is just to declare another directive. So it'll be app web API new table name, and then respond to that in whatever markup I like. So my next movie, I'll try to prove that works quite quickly. Thank you very much.